mirror matchup. Mr. representing in the red, Wham in the blue. Let's see how deep we can get. Is it going to be feudal aggression, or are we just parked in for a long haul deep into Imperial?
I'm really curious at the approach that Mista is going to take with this game, because I have said this before, Mista is one of those reactive players. He's the type of player that probes you with something and then checks your reaction and responds in kind. He is relying much more on reactions from the opponent than any other players. Many players just say, okay, this is my game plan and I'm going to stick with it. Whereas for Mista, he's gonna poke around, he's going to pop out a couple of longbows, see what he can accomplish with them, see what response he's getting, and he's going to adjust his game plan accordingly. And truth be told, I think the civilization that he does this best with is the English.
Yeah, they definitely have some flexible timings that just aren't really apparent when you start playing. Like, if you think about the way the Age of Empire 4 began, you know, the French and the English were the most played civs. The French were like, me have knights, me stab, stab, good. The English were like, me have longbows, me pew, pew, good. And that was it. Like, people, for the longest time, people just fixated on optimizing those strategies. They didn't try to innovate different builds. And I think Mr. was one of the earliest examples of someone just taking that table and flipping it and then turning it into a makeshift imaginary car that you can vroom around in, because he was roaming around with those horsemen. And I remember one of the qualifiers, him completely ambushing players like Give You Anxiety, who just didn't expect it as a Mongol player in a matchup where they'd usually be the tempo setter.
Exactly, Mista is one of the players that loves the English horseman the most. In fact, I would dare to say that he prefers English horseman play as opposed to longbow play. And when you look at a Mista game, it's almost guaranteed that the English will have horsemen out on the battlefield. The question is whether Vam is prepared for that. Because this is a tricky matchup, especially because it's an English mirror. We have had the same matchup on Highview when Poppy Pop played against Vortex. And there we discussed the fact that you go up with the council hall, you are popping out longbows, or at least you have the chance to do that. So you might see an immediate horseman play from the opponent because you know that there is gonna be some longbows to kill with your horseman anyways.
And can I just say that this generation is actually, like, I'd say one of the most balanced generations we've seen all tournament so far. Like, it's almost as if Petito just knew it was going to be an English mirror. If you think about what matters here, back gold spawns that aren't going to be exposed, who cares about deer? Both players have Ford Stone, and the woods are split up at a similar pace. Like, I think this is probably as good as it gets for an English mirror matchup on Altai.
I'm gonna let you into a little secret, because when it comes to map seeding from the admin side, it's not just the fact that there is a list of seeds that are fine. Specific seeds are reserved for specific civilization matchups. So that's the reason why they have to hunt for dozens of seeds. And for example, you have a list of seeds, but there is a seed reserved for, let's say, a Mongol mirror, or there's a seed reserved for a Mongol versus French civilization matchup, or at least, even if you don't have a civilization or like a map set for every single civilization matchup, for the map-reliant civilizations, for the ones that really live and die with map spawns, there are specific scripts allocated to make sure that it is as fair as possible.
And that's why it's called Lord Petito, not Lord Potato. He isn't sitting on his ass doing nothing. He's working tirelessly to find these specific matchups. Big shout out to our boy behind the scenes for the hours, the perilous hours he puts in just to make sure that we have balanced generations.
And it is a very time-consuming thing to do, because you have to generate maps again and again and again, think over whether that is indeed going to be balanced, think over whether that's going to be good for all civilization matchup or just a specific one. It's a tremendous amount of work. But you know what else is tremendous? It's the success of Mista with the single scout he has. He has found the stone, so he knows that a second TC could be on the table here for Wham.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go for Mining Stone. Mining Stone is a very difficult thing to do in real life. But in game, they make it look so easy. I mean, it's like, look at the lack of effort in their swings as well. With the wait, are those even pickaxes? The hammers, right? They're just smashing hammers into it. And can we just like highlight that for a sec? I don't feel like you'd actually be able to break rocks with the limited effort that's put into these swings.
I mean, especially if the head of that hammer is just made out of stone.
Look at the guy on the right. He's not even hitting the stone. He's like, yeah, guys, we're working really hard. Dude, you're like air swinging right now. We're working a hard day's work here, and you're just idling.
I mean, he probably doesn't get his paycheck very often, and he's just upset about it.
He's like, this is just an in-between job. I'm going to get an office job later, I swear. No office jobs in this kingdom, my friend. You're either hitting farms or you're hitting trees.
And farming isn't the thing right now, so, you know, the alternative is that we just conscript you to be a longbowman to be slain by the enemy longbows. You can choose your fate, but I can tell you, mining stone is still the better fate for you.
Speaking of those longbows, they're wrapping around. Only 3 of them. He can micro this. Wham can be fine if he pulls back the injured villagers. And ooh, too late on the pullback.
-1, -2. You can make up for it for the second TC.
Pigeon. Yep, he'll back off in time. Nice switch over though.
-3.
Mista catches him switching.
-4.
A lot of villagers starting to fall. He has to commit. He just can't back away. You have to sacrifice now.
5.
You're committed.
Oh boy, it's gonna be 6 going down. You can wait. Was it a villager? I think that was a tower villager that also joined the fun. Got picked off by the town center. Here's the deal. Vam has the second town center to work with, so he can catch up in villagers, but it looks concerning for him. He's down to 18 villagers because right now, when he needs economy, he doesn't have it, and he could be outnumbered with longbows. We could soon see a forward tower tonight at the wood line. And Vam, he's got this council hall on the front. The moment he pops out a longbowman, it's gonna get killed. This is concerning for Vam at minimum.
Wham! He's going to make sure he's got the food. He's going onto the deer. Deer that have comparable gathering rates to the farms at this stage, so it will give him the float he needs to make his way up past this uncomfortable phase. And let's keep in mind what this TC is at least doing. It's protecting the wood line and somewhat protecting the gold. So trying to outpost spam now is less feasible for Mista.
And he won't even go for that. In fact, Mista, as I said, he's going to take what the enemy gives him. He is going Castle Age over here, and that could be a great response. Harass these villagers, lower the efficiency of the enemy economy, and get your own second town center in the form of the King's Palace. And there is the first stable coming out here as a response to those longbows.
Yep, prepping himself for it. And this could be a very quick castle if Mista chooses to take it. And keep in mind that Wham, like, he's catching up in the village department at the moment after losing so many, after sacrificing so many, and Wham will at least try to be somewhat present in the midfield while he booms up. Like, his goal should be to reach castle still, minimum horsemen, with a focus on getting knights out of these stables quickly.
The concern I have here for Wham is that he has shown that stable too early. Mista has clearly seen this. Mista's gonna have a tremendous amount of time to prep for this one, and as I said, he loves to respond to what the enemy gives him. He sees the stable, he's gonna be prepped for that. When he gets into Castle Age, his response is going to represent the fact that he knows about that stable.
Damn, Mista woke up and chose violence, wrapping around. Deer have to back away. First horseman is going to come out with the attack speed buffer. Should be able to strike down a few longbows here. He might even join in with the short bows. Actually might be valuable to do so at this stage, just to get rid of this vanguard force. So many injured longbows.
Yeah, you kind of gotta clean that up, because we talked about this one. Sure thing, you have the second town center already, but the villager count is still even, and you do have a lot of inefficiency on your eco. You see, these villagers have to walk out here, and they have to do so without wheelbarrow.
For berries, Lidakor. Berries! You're the English! Have some self-respect!
It is not looking happy, that's for sure, especially when you still have the hunt at the back of your base. And the thing is that Mista, if he spots that, he can once again put up the pressure on it. Sure thing, you abandon the berries, but that once again forces the villagers to walk. Every second you spend walking, you're not gathering resources, and that's the reason why Mista is going to beat Vamp to Castle Age by a massive margin. And when he reaches that's not King's Palace, right? The icon looks weird. Okay, it's a King's Palace.
Yeah. There's no way he's dropping a white town in his own base.
Yeah, I would have been shocked. I have to say that overlay covering half of the icon on the top is very disturbing.
Yeah, if that was a white tower, I would think the Mist has been awake too long, getting a little bit delirious and starting to see things. Like, there's just an imaginary arm in his base. But
if there wasn't a stable, like, genuinely, if there wasn't a stable, the white tower being very aggressive could have been a thing. It would be very risky, but I mean, we have seen Mista pulling 25 villagers to make a castle. With that stable up, it's way too risky for him, and the King's Palace just pays off so fast. And with that, there is gonna be no villager lead for Vam, a player that has dropped that second town center so earlier, and keep in mind that he's yet to reach Castle Age.
Yeah, and he's a long way away. Like, he's only now setting up the farms that will pay dividends down the line, but you have to start question marking if this game will last that long, because with such a big tech lead, Wham might be forced to sidestep now into racks and go for Spearman, because the most logical choice now available to Mr. is to start spamming the Knights, and there's the double stable drop.
This will be spotted by Wham, but this will force Wham to go for Spearman at best, and that's not the direction that you want to be heading towards. Ideally, you would love to fight Knight versus Knight, but will you have the chance to do that? Now, the base of Wham is fully walled in here, but those walls won't last forever, especially when there are longbows to pick off the repairing villagers. So, it is a full sense of safety right now for Wham to think that he's safe behind those walls. He won't be safe come minute number 12.
And with no defense force, you have to think about your walls being torched as kind of like a breach in the side of a boat. The water starts to add pressure. As the pressure builds, it's eventually going to break. And once it breaks through that breach, it's going to flood through. That's what happens whenever we watch this defense with Palisades. 1 Knight, 2 Knight, 3. All of a sudden, 7 are wailing on your walls and then breaching and rushing into your eco.
And we have seen the relentlessness of Mista. If you go back to game number 1 with the Chinese Palace Guards, or if you go back to the Danube River game with the Night Flood, he's never going to relieve pressure from you. You can't just say, okay, I will clean this up and I'm done. More and more Knights will come in, more and more villagers will be slaughtered, and ultimately, you will just be drained dry on the resource bank because all your villagers will be idle for so long. And it looks like Mista, usual Mista tradition, not going for wheelbarrow. Wham himself is grabbing it right now.
Really? I told you, this guy only likes tractors. No wheelbarrow. Most of the games, in fact, no wheelbarrow. The brilliant
How can you
part
research
is, like,
tractors in this game?
You can't. It's Mister's property. Like, he has an IP on it. He's a time traveler. He discovered it a few hundred years before everyone else. The rest of the world is doomed, and the English will always farm better.
You know what else they'll do better? Picking up relics over here, because Wham right now, he's confined into his base, still yet to reach Castle Age, and this means that he essentially is forfeiting all map control here for Mista, allowing him to drop towers, but more importantly, allowing Mista to secure what could even be 5 relics for himself.
And the awkward part for Wham is he might now be forced to go for a white tower just to stabilize himself, because 3 TCs sounds good, Lidakor, but when you've got such a small cut of the map, I don't think there's enough resources there for 3 TCs worth of villages.
And, it's too greedy. I don't like it. The thing is that you're going to be outnumbered army-wise. Sure thing, you're gonna have a 3rd town center, but the problem is that you need to find a way to take good engagements in the next 1 or 2 minutes. And this is not something that's available right now for Wham. He's gonna be on 3 town centers, but he's gonna be outnumbered military-wise. At least he picks off the villagers so that the 2nd tower isn't going up, but I feel like it's a little too greedy here for Wham.
But hear me out, Lidakor. Hear me out. Mista right now, where is he aggressing? He's always looking center. Wham can go around the sides. His eco doesn't have to remain blocked in, because the only units from Mista that are going out onto the flanks right now are monks.
True, and English are known to have a relatively slow-moving army out there, and Mista, as you said, he's concentrating his forces in the middle area. He wants to keep the knights there as well, so he might struggle to find those pocket ecos out there. 2nd tower now coming up here, though, and food is one thing, but how about wood? English is a very wood-reliant civilization, and it looks like the monk is also gonna snitch here. He is going to tell the knights where those villagers are.
And Wham didn't react to the short bows. Now, the optimal play for Wham to that wood situation is he actually should have walled across there so he has reserved woods. And I think he's going to do that in the next 2 to 3 minutes, but the opportunity to at least block one of these relics is now passed. Mista looking very likely to gain all 5 relics in the map by the 16-minute mark.
And those 5 relics will easily offset the extra town center advantage that Wham has. Wham might feel like, okay, I'll be ahead in villagers, but keep this in mind, this is a slower paced map, a map that has a potential to go late game. And if we enter that late game stage, having the relic superiority is gonna be a massive factor in the favor of Mista. So will a Knight raid here.
Jason, no textile, so heavy hit, but the wall.
Uh-oh, you gotta rush it up.
Uh-oh. Yeah, how many are going to die for you to rush it up? The longbows are just tickling him right now.
You gotta pick off as many as you can. Looks like one knight might actually go down here to longbows. 2 of those knights were weak, but it's not just the fact that you lost 3 villagers here, it's the fact that you are stretched out on resources. You see, right now Wham is still forced to take berries. He's lacking map control, and it is becoming more and more relevant. As you said, You can't play with 3 town centers in such a tiny space, and Mista is now realizing that he needs to prevent an expansion to the south.
But Wham's already getting control of that area. This is the reserves I was talking about. Small wood line, deer, and the berries. So he can float himself for a little while longer, which is why he's able to afford the free TCs. But the problem is the negotiations have been carved up. You know, territories have been given, and somehow in that negotiation, Wham has ended up with, I'd say, about a fifth of the map.
And what's even worse for Wham is that he might have the 2 northern and southern flanks walled off. Take a look at the sacred site locations. If that wall off happens, Mista can cap the sacred sites, concentrate all his efforts in the middle, a place where he already has towers up for the network of castles aura, and start the sacred site timer, forcing Wham out of his base much faster and much sooner than Wham wanted to leave.
And on top of that, even if he doesn't control all the sacred sites, even if he has just, say, 2, even more gold. And that's the worrying detail here. Like, Wham will probably quickly realize that he's now in a situation where he has no relics, and if he isn't able to end this game in, say, the next 20 minutes, you just reach late game. You're outscaled. Unless Mista all of a sudden has a heart attack and falls on his keyboard and stops playing the game well like he is right now, it's very difficult to see a way in which Wham can actually exceed Mista's performance past 40 minutes.
Especially if you consider the fact that the villager count is essentially identical. So not only does Mista have 5 relics now, the villager count is still the same, sacred sites are about to get capped, and one has to wonder what kind of recovery arcs Wham has in a mirror matchup, because that's the key thing here. It's one thing that Mista has an advantage. The bigger thing is that this is a mirror matchup, and in a mirror you fall behind, it's very difficult to recover.
All right, now, and this small defense force is trying to transition to crossbows and man-at-arms, but Mista now up to 18 knights. Remember that flood through analogy I gave? There's plenty of knights to flood through and drown your economy here, and the attack speed aura is activated because Wham is trying to defend.
And he's catching Wham in the middle of a man-at-arms transition. You can see at the right side of the screen, man-at-arms is slowly being added here by Wham. Crossbows also hitting the field, but once you play with crossbows and men-at-arms, if Mista ever breaches those walls, he can take down numerous villagers with him before those knights get picked off by those slow-moving infantry units.
He has very finite resources as well. The Siege Workshop's going to strain that further. He only has a single gold vein. The next one is outside his base, and Mista's already in position to block that as a resource. No reserve gold on the eastern front either. Wham is running out fast.
He's running out of space as well. Oh!
Whoops.
Ooh!
Whoops, the wall!
Oh, the squeeze through!
Mate, those boys have been lubed up with KY jellies. They can slip through anything there.
Oh, Wham had his army close by at least, and Mista, he's hesitant to dive in. If Mista was leading this set 3-2, I could have seen him diving in. It's too risky right now to risk losing his entire army. But if this wasn't the scoreline that we have, I think he could have risked doing it, because I feel like the upside of 20 knights running into the eco of Wham would have been tremendous.
Upside for Wham, more knights are randomly just running into his waiting arms, and the crossbow count is building. Wham not out of this yet, and this is a clutch timing actually, because moving out here and walling across will give him another 4,000 gold and might make it possible to access the northern corner where he's got a fat stack of 8k waiting to be
Yeah, he needs that big gold. He needs that large gold pile, but Mista is thinking about it. He's walling that side off. Sacred side countdown now starting, and Wham, he needs to make something happen really soon.
Yeah, the Spimmer need to get across. Attack speed buff is going to scare Mr. away. Doesn't want to take this fight right now. Actually, quite surprised he backed off the 2 spears. Could have done a heavy dose of damage to the backside eco. But instead, Wham looking to get these walls up. Response now coming out as Mista does have the outpost vision scouting this out. We'll wrap around. Army already in place. Wham looking like he's going to make his stand.
He needs to make his stand over here. He needs the gold. He needs the space for his farms. Men-at-Arms now engaging the knights over here. They do have the clad armor. Longbows not focusing on the crossbows so far.
Yeah, he's taking out the crossbows, but he keeps switching over the auto aggro here. Most crossbows gone, only 2 remaining. Now already shrunk down to 0. He has no pen, no damage to deal with the knights. This is going to be an absolute rout, and after that, the floodgates are open because the tree line is very clearly chopped this time. GG called. Game 7 will be required for the 2nd time today.
Oh my goodness, history repeats itself. Pop people up 3 games against Vortex. It is a comeback from Vortex, making it 3-3 to push it into a decider. Wham was so dominant in the first 3 games. It looked like Mista's gonna get destroyed. Some of the games were so underwhelming from Mista's side and so impressive from Wham. The same WAM that before game number 4 has not dropped a single game this weekend. Now it's an even footing, and we're going into a scenario in which Mista might be the favorite player because the decider is going to be played on none other but 4 Lakes